if you're anything like me, you might want to someday learn Japanese. Maybe to play some untranslated game. Maybe to really understand the lyrics to a song that you really like. Maybe it's because you're a huge fucking nerd like me. That's me. That's my category. I've been studying in earnest for around 2 years. I can't make this finger without jumping. I'm very sorry. And in that time, I've gone from not really knowing all that much to being able to very comfortably play JRPGs. I can watch anime and listen to podcasts and stuff without subtitles. All of that. Am I just a gigabrain genius or something? No, not at all. It's just that this has been my major hyperfixation for a while now. And that's really what has enabled me to do this. But the methods that I use, I want to share them with people. I want to tell people how I did it, so hopefully they can replicate what I've done. If you have any questions or anything, please let me know down there. Fair warning that I'm not going to be covering anything really novel. So if you have seen channels such as No or maybe Leave a Kitty, nothing I'm going to be talking about here is anything new. I pretty much use the exact same method that they used. If you want videos that are more kind of higher quality, higher production value, go watch them instead. But if you know me personally, or you just want to hear my methods, or maybe my intricacies or something, and hi, hello. Now, before I start, I do want to mention that I've had a very big interest in languages and linguistics for a very long time. Ever since I was like maybe 11, 12-ish. I'm the kind of person who genuinely likes reading Wikipedia articles about grammar, so I learned Japanese grammar, very basic Japanese grammar, like sowwy structure, you know what ni and o and e and to mean, those particles, just from reading Wikipedia articles and stuff when I was bored when I was like 13, 14, 15. That was before I really started, studying completely in earnest. So if you want to count that in like my total study time, which I wouldn't, then really I've been studying Japanese for maybe like almost 8 years, but I don't really think that's fair, TBH. But one thing I do want to say when it comes to grammar is beyond the absolute basics, I do not believe you really need to study a lot in depth. I take a very immersion heavy approach to language learning. I mainly focus on reading and listening to the language itself. I feel like that's the best way to absorb it. And you don't really need to study grammar a whole ton. Maybe like a tiny bit. Because the thing with grammar is, if you've listened to Japanese enough, if you've read enough Japanese, you'll see the same things come up over and over and over again. The same phrasings, the same structures, the same weird conjugations, the same like weird phrases and idioms. You'll see those all the time if you just keep listening to the language over and over and over again. So you don't really need to study grammar. The first couple times you see a new structure, you're gonna be confused. You're not gonna know what it means. But maybe there'll be some kind of context around it which can help, clue you in to what it actually means. A personal example for me is when I was reading Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei. And there was this one chapter where they were, I don't exactly remember. It's about wishing and praying for stuff, right? People want to make a bunch of outlandish wishes about stuff. And every single sentence ended with the phrase "yo ni," and I, prior to that, had no clue what that meant in that context, and what "yo" meant. But I didn't know what "yo ni" at the end of a sentence would mean. But I could infer through the context of that chapter that it meant, you're kind of praying for something, you're hoping that something happens. And so in that way, that's just one example. That's how you pick up grammar through immersion. And it's just a natural process. Even for the most confusing ones. Like, I remember one that tripped me up a fair bit was Zaro and I saw that a bunch over and over and over again. But eventually I was like, okay, I don't know what this is. So I looked it up once. And I got a very quick explanation, and it just it clicked. Because I'd already seen it so many times, I kind of, slotted that meaning back into those instances where I had heard it before. And in that way, I could sort of acquire that one single structure, that Zaro and I, without studying it in a textbook or anything. So the bulk of my studying has been focused on vocabulary. Because in order to even pick up grammar, you kind of need to know what the sentence is talking about-ish. Kind of-ish. In a way-ish. And you're not gonna know that if you don't know words. Words are the absolute foundation of everything. So, how do I study words? Japanese isn't like Spanish or French, where if you're an English speaker, you're gonna have a ton of shared vocabulary between them where you can guess maybe a tenth of the words right off the bat before you even start studying. Japanese is not like that. Japanese is absolutely not like that. So, what I use to study vocabulary is Anki. I can go into more detail some other time, but basically Anki is a flashcard app which has this thing called a spaced repetition system built into it. So what that means is you'll see a new word and you'll be like, okay, cool, new word. You click okay, or whatever it says. I don't remember. And then you see it the next day, right? And if you remember it that day, you'll see it in 3 days. And if you remember it then, you'll see it in a week. The mind break. Oh god. You'll see it in a week. And you'll see it in a fortnight. And then a month. And then 2 months. Etc. 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 It just keeps going. And if at any time you forget the word, you either get reset all the way back, or in my case, since I want to save a little bit of time, I have it set so it just halves the duration of it. Not sure if that's the most efficient or effective, but that's what I do. That's what I've chosen to do. And in this way, you get to review vocabulary in the most efficient way possible. Get to see a new word and review it pretty much right before you're about to forget it. And so in this way, you don't need to review 6,000 words of vocabulary every single day to remember everything. Now, the deck that I used was the Core 2K 6K deck, which is the 6,000 most common Japanese words. It's fine for the most part. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Example sentences. It has audio. It has everything you could really want. The main issue is just the vocabulary selection itself, because it's based off newspapers, right? It's not based off anime vocabulary, manga vocabulary, video game vocabulary, daily life vocabulary. Okay, I guess daily life vocabulary, but still. It's very much based on statistics collected from formal newspapers, very formal writing and political writing and stuff. So you'll on occasion find words that you really do not need to know in your life, like gaisho or okurasho, or stuff like that. There might be other better decks out there nowadays, but that's the one that I use. That's the one I use. And it took me really far. It got me really far. After around 6 months of study, which was around 2,000 words into the deck, I decided to start actually, doing the immersing part, which would entail that I would start to watch anime and read manga and stuff entirely in Japanese without English subtitles. I would use Japanese subtitles because these ears are not great and my arm is also not great. Jesus Christ. The very first anime that I tried watching was Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei, which I already mentioned. Probably not the best pick for a first anime to try and watch. I would recommend trying to watch shows that you are already somewhat familiar with. Either you've already seen it or you know the basic premise. Just make it an excuse to rewatch a show you watched 3 years ago and not a very pun-heavy new show you know nothing about. I mean, it was great. I loved that show when I was watching it. It hit me with so much dopamine. But it was not easy. I rewatched the first episode maybe 6-7 times because I could barely understand what they were saying. It really requires a lot from you, both in terms of your attention and your patience. The key to being a successful immerser is coming to terms with the fact that you're not going to understand everything that you hear. In fact, probably not a lot of what you hear. You're probably not going to understand most of what you hear at the beginning. And that's just something you have to get used to. It's something you do get used to over time if you put in the time and effort to, actually immerse. I just realized my arms are... And I feel this is an area that trips up a lot of people, because a lot of people feel that, they want to understand everything before they dive in, But that's just not gonna happen. Realistically, it's not gonna happen. Because you're gonna have to know so much. And it's gonna be really hard to know all that much if you aren't actually actively listening to Japanese. Again, Anki can only get you so far. Anki has a spaced repetition system, but you know what also does? Listening to Japanese. You actively review words by hearing them in a context and understanding them. Your brain will learn to kind of fire the right neurons to indicate that you know that word. It'll get better at doing that the more you hear a word. So it's a big hurdle. It's a big barrier, as some may say. And the main motivation for me, and what really pushed me through it, again, was that kind of euphoria, those big eureka moments when I finally understood what I was listening to. I got a joke in Zetsubo Sensei, and that's why I love that show so much, because it made me feel smart, for lack of a better term. It made me feel smart. It made me feel like, whoa, I was doing something. I was actually, achieving my goal in a way. So I feel it's less so about having fun in Japanese and more so just having fun learning Japanese. That's really what it's all about. It's hard. It's hard. So I continued with the core 2K6K deck until I finished it around June 2022. That's when I finished it. June 2022. So after I finished the core 2K6K deck, I started making my own custom deck with my own custom cards, which was at the beginning a huge deterrent for me doing Anki because I didn't know about custom decks, or not custom decks, pre-made decks. I didn't know about the core 2K6K deck. I didn't know anything about that. And I always felt that, making your cards, it's hard. It is kind of hard. There are definitely ways to speed up the process. You can make it really simple to just make a card out of nowhere. Why am I doing that? It's really easy to make cards, custom cards just on the fly. There are methods to do that. It's also just, what cards should you make? What words should you put in your deck? And I feel like I was not the best at deciding that. I kind of just threw everything in there. The most obscure words that I would never hear again, I put in there. It's not the smartest. It's absolutely not the smartest. But that's what I did, and I kept it up. I learned around, I want to say, another 5,000 words. Until now, I don't really do a whole ton of Anki. Well, I do my Anki every single day, but I don't really study new words a whole ton. 11,000 words is a lot, but there's still gonna be tons of words that you're just not gonna know. But I feel at this point, I can kind of infer a lot of words. And immersing, which is what I'm focusing on more than ever now, is a lot easier now. When you know Japanese, it becomes easier to kind of, figure out the context and kind of infer meanings for things you don't know. But that's pretty much all I've done. That is what I do. That is how I am learning Japanese. I want to tell other people because I want more people to have success with this. I feel that language learning is an incredibly rewarding hobby. So if any of you have any questions or want to know anything more, down there, arm, down there. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. So bye bye.